The timing was what stunned me most. Not the words. Not even the room. Just the fact that they waited exactly 23 minutes after I submitted the final version of the energy optimization protocol. I remember the time because I looked at the clock, proud and relieved, before I walked out of the lab. 14 years. 14 years of code, setbacks, fixes at 2 a.m., and half celebrations in half-empty coffee cups. I finally felt like I could breathe, maybe even sleep. But the smile didn't last. I'd barely made it back to my desk when Emma from HR called. Not a warm call. No check-in. Just, "Can you come down for a quick chat?" Her voice already told me more than the words. When I stepped into the meeting room, it was already arranged. Papers fanned out neatly. A printed NDA. A resignation letter dated. And across the table Darren, our CEO, sat like this was any other Tuesday. He didn't stand. Didn't smile. Just nodded once and gestured to the chair. He didn't waste time. Said the company was moving in a new direction. Said my contract had come to a natural conclusion. His voice had the tone of someone reading a menu. And then the line I still hear sometimes when I wake up at night. The patent has been finalized under the company's name. Legal advised its standard process. Clean, simple ownership. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because something inside me froze. Like the part of me that believed in fairness had suddenly realized it didn't matter. He pushed a folder toward me. "You're free to review all the documents. We'd appreciate if you didn't make this messy." Messy. I blinked slowly. Not because I was holding back tears, I didn't have the energy for that. But because it hit me how calm he was. This man who once sat across from me during our early days with a whiteboard and a broken coffee machine. Telling me my work would change everything. That I'd never be forgotten. That the world needed someone like me at the center of the clean energy conversation. Now I was a meeting on his calendar. A checkbox. A polite removal. I left without saying goodbye. I didn't slam the door or throw the folder. I didn't want to give them anything they could twist. They'd already taken the rest. It wasn't until I got home that the shock wore off. I stood in my living room for a long time staring at nothing. I remember setting my keys down too gently. Like noise might break me. The silence wrapped around me like a wet coat. 14 years. And not just in work hours. I miss my mother's final days to protect a system outage that no one even remembers now. I listened to her voicemail over and over for weeks after she passed. Her voice still hopeful, still asking when I'd come visit. I promised her I was doing something important. Something that would help more people than I could count. And now my name wasn't even on it. There were no headlines. No team-wide memo. Just a digital scrub of my involvement. My ID was deactivated by the time I tried to log into our secure server. My email bounced back with an auto-reply. "This account is no longer active." They didn't just cut me off. They erased me. I sat on the floor that night, knees pulled up, laptop resting against my legs, just breathing. I didn't open the folder they gave me. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they'd done. What I didn't know yet was whether I had any way to undo it. But part of me had already started thinking. Because I wasn't naive. Not really. I'd seen enough subtle shifts over the last year to know Darren had changed. When he stopped inviting me to investor calls. When legal started requesting drafts in editable formats only. When he told me, smiling, that it might be better if I focused on the tech and left the messaging to the board. So months before this day ever came, I started preparing quietly. I'd mirrored every file I ever touched. Every version. Every test run. And 9 months ago, I registered the full uncompressed version of the algorithm under a small entity I incorporated overseas. It wasn't public. It wasn't flashy. It was mine. They didn't know that. And they never asked. I stared at my laptop, opened the directory marked Redline Protocol Private, and checked the timestamp. Everything was still there. Secure. Verified. Watermarked with my personal credentials. The core engine, the one that made the public version run, was encrypted and tied to a time-sensitive license. It required periodic reauthorization from the original source code. That source, still connected to me, legally. They had the outer shell, the version that could fake functionality for a while. But without the periodic validation string, it would stall. System by system, partner by partner. 48 companies. All of them dependent. All of them licensed under a clause that invalidated their rights if the original creator was removed unethically. Clause 12.4a. They probably didn't even read it. I closed the laptop. The room was still dark. My water glass untouched. My inbox filling with vague LinkedIn pings, and we're so shocked to hear messages. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I stood up, stretched my back, and opened the window. The city was still buzzing like it always did. Horns, sirens, life moving forward without pause. And maybe that was the strangest part. Because while the rest of the world didn't know anything had changed, I had never felt more awake. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to post. I wasn't going to beg for my name back. They wanted to see what the system could do without me. Then I'd let them find out. In 8 days, the reauthentication key would expire. Let's see who remembers where it came from when the lights flicker. 8 days felt both too long and not long enough. During the first day, I did nothing but monitor. I kept tabs on BrightForge systems the same way I used to babysit servers back when we first launched. Their pings came through like clockwork. License renewal requests, usage spikes, third-party verifications. None of it looked unusual. From the outside, everything still worked. But I knew what was coming. Their version of the algorithm was tethered. A simplified derivative dependent on a regular signal from the true core. They didn't know that. Or maybe they thought I'd just keep the line alive out of fear or guilt. That I'd let them keep using it just because it would be easier than fighting. I didn't touch anything yet. Not until I was ready. By day 2, news started picking up around their IPO. Headlines were calling it the clean energy disruptor of the decade. Investors were circling. Darren had started doing press interviews, calling the software a new era of automated grid efficiency. He said things like, "We built this technology to serve everyone," as if he'd ever written a line of it. He never said my name. Of course he didn't. He talked about scalability, about their vision, about how BrightForge transformed innovation into practical application. And I just watched. On day 3, I went back into the compliance contracts, 48 of them, each one tied to a regional partner. Some small, some global. I reread every clause, every signature. They were still intact. The violation trigger hadn't activated yet, because I hadn't filed the incident. But I could. Clause 12.4a. The one nobody had cared about. The one I buried under standard usage terms and licensing conditions. It read, "In the event of unethical removal or displacement of the primary inventor without attribution, all rights and access to the licensed technology will be immediately revoked, pending review." And it wasn't just legal fluff. It was enforceable. Internationally. All it needed was for me to click one box, attach proof, and submit to the platform registry. And I had proof. On day 4, I received an encrypted message from someone I hadn't heard from in nearly a year, Miriam, a legal assistant who once worked under the GC at BrightForge. We weren't close, but I had helped her when her apartment flooded one winter. Gave her a couch for 2 nights. We'd barely spoken since. She sent me a short audio file and a single line. "I figured you'd want this before they bury it." The clip was short. Darren's voice was unmistakable. "She thinks this is still her baby," he said, chuckling. "We'll just shift ownership. It's cleaner. The board doesn't want her name on the IPO filings anyway. She's too internal-facing." A pause. "We'll drown her in paperwork if she pushes back. You've got the termination letter ready." "Already drafted," someone else replied. Another laugh. I didn't finish the audio. I didn't have to. I already knew what I was dealing with. But hearing it, that made it final. By day 5, I called Julian. He answered on the first ring. "I was wondering how long it would take," he said. No greetings. Just that. Julian had always known how to read silence. It was one of the reasons I kept him at a distance when everything at work started shifting. He could see what I didn't want to admit. That I was being shut out. That I was becoming a name on a server instead of a person in the room. "You still sitting on that article?" I asked. "I have the bones," he said. "I didn't publish because I figured you weren't ready." "I'm ready," I said. He didn't ask for details. Just told me to email him what I had. "No rush. Just one thing," he said before hanging up. "Tell the truth, not the version that makes you sound polite." Day 6 I started drafting. Not a takedown. Not revenge. Just a record. The steps. The silence. The work that no one credited but everyone used. I included timestamps, project logs, original code commits. All stored with digital signatures that predated anything BrightForge had touched. Then I included a copy of the audio file. At the top of the page I wrote, I never wanted credit. I just wanted honesty. Day 7 the system sent its final sync request. The signal would expire at noon the next day. Without the validation key, their algorithm would start cycling. First, nothing drastic. Just delays. Missed predictions. But within 48 hours, the system would begin flagging critical errors across all partner platforms. It would look like a glitch, but it would be a warning. I didn't click the revoke button yet. I still hesitated, because while BrightForge was the one that betrayed me, the companies using the software weren't all complicit. Some of them were just trying to keep their lights on, trying to deliver power to hospitals, factories, homes. This wasn't a private war. It was a public infrastructure risk. That's what made it so hard. But then a message came in from one of the partners, Greystone Utilities. They just received a new licensing invoice from BrightForge, 10 times higher than their original rate. With zero explanation, the email ended with a question. Is this still you? That's when I knew. They weren't just stealing my name. They were selling my work at a markup to the people I designed it to help. I logged back into the portal, attached the audio, checked the clause box, click submit. I didn't expect the world to stop spinning the moment I hit submit. No alarm. No sudden power cuts. Just a quiet click and then stillness. But underneath the surface, inside servers and cloud systems across 5 continents, something had already begun to shift. Like a fault line that had just cracked, too far below to hear but deep enough to change everything. First, nothing obvious happened. I refreshed the Thorncore portal twice just to make sure the submission went through. It had. Status. License revocation accepted. Clause 12.4a triggered. I got up from the chair and walked to the window. The city below looked the same. People rushing, horns blaring. A street vendor arguing with someone over change. Completely unaware that 48 companies were now unknowingly running software with no valid license. I stayed quiet. I didn't post anything. I didn't make a scene. I just waited. At 12:13 p.m. my first email arrived. It was from an engineer at one of the logistics firms in Europe. Subject line. Connection error? The message was brief. Their automated routing predictions had frozen mid-update. The system wasn't responding to new data. For minutes later another email came. Then another. By 12:30, the inbox was lighting up with red flag queries. Brazil. Singapore. Canada. Everyone had the same issue. The optimization engine stopped processing live inputs. None of them knew why. But I did. BrightForge's version of the algorithm wasn't failing because of bad code. It was failing because it was hollow. Just a shell without the authentication key that lived in the original system. My system. The one they removed me from. I pulled out the template I prepared days earlier. A short message with clear language. No threats. No tech jargon. Hello. Due to confirmed ethical violations by your previous software provider, the license agreement attached to the system in use has been invalidated under Clause 12.4a. You are invited to relicense directly with Thorncore AG under the original terms, with attribution and fair compliance. I didn't have to convince them. Most of them were already reading the news. Julian's article dropped at 1:02 p.m. sharp. The architect erased. How BrightForge stole the future and got locked out of it. The piece was factual. Sharp but not angry. It told the story clearly. One developer. 14 years. A global licensing scheme tied to ethical conduct. An erasure that backfired. He included the audio I gave him. Darren's voice joking about removing my name, and how they'd bury me in paperwork if she makes noise. It went viral within an hour. By 2 p.m. the story was trending across 3 platforms. BrightForge still hadn't said a word. 2:17 I got the call. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Eva. His voice was calm but tight. Controlled. Like he'd just finished yelling at someone and hadn't fully cooled off. It was Darren. You need to reverse this. Right now. I didn't say anything. I just let him talk. This is bigger than you. You're disrupting energy flow for half the network. Do you understand what you've done? I replied quietly, I didn't break anything. You disconnected me and tried to sell the system anyway. He sighed like I was being difficult on purpose. Okay, listen. I'll make this simple. We'll bring you back. Publicly. CTO title. Equity. Full credit. We'll undo the filing. I don't want your title. You want the company? I want the truth, I said. And I already have it. There was a pause. You're ruining your own legacy. No, I said. I'm protecting it. He went quiet again. This time longer. Then he added bitterly. You think this makes you the hero? You think they'll remember your name? I smiled, but not the kind of smile you show anyone. Just the quiet kind. The kind that happens when you've already made peace with not being remembered so long as you're not erased. I ended the call. That night I stayed up replying to messages. Most were from partner companies who now wanted direct access to the software. Many apologized, even though they hadn't done anything wrong. Some just said thank you. I sent them all the same offer. Relicense with Thorn Core. No price hike. No exclusivity. Just transparency. One condition. No mention of BrightForge in future usage reports. By morning, 32 of the 48 had already signed. Not a single one reached out to Darren. Julian messaged me later that day. Did you see the press statement? I hadn't. He sent me the link. BrightForge's PR team had finally responded. They blamed an internal conflict regarding attribution, called it a technical disruption, and ended with the line, "We remain committed to clean energy innovation, regardless of the individual voices involved." The individual voices. I closed the tab. I didn't need their correction. The software was running again. Not through them but through us. Through the people who came back and signed clean licenses. Who chose respect over convenience. I didn't sue. I didn't ask for money. I just wrote back to each company. Thank you for returning. Let's build something better now. That afternoon, I walked into my kitchen and made tea for the first time in weeks. No screens. No noise. Just a kettle and a window full of clouds. When the water boiled, I poured it and sat quietly watching steam rise. Sometimes people think justice is loud. But it's not. Sometimes it's just a quiet message. A system blinking back to life. A stolen name returning in a new form, under new terms. And sometimes it's sitting in your own space, knowing that what you built can no longer be taken. Not without the world seeing what was done to you. I never held a press conference. No interviews. No victory posts. No mic drops. People kept waiting for me to say something big. Something dramatic. But I didn't. Because I wasn't trying to win attention. I just wanted the truth to settle in where silence used to live. The emails from BrightForge stopped completely after that first week. Their board issued a vague announcement about Darren stepping away to focus on personal matters. The IPO was canceled. Their valuation crashed by half. And they pulled down the promotional pages that once quoted my code without naming me. I didn't feel sorry for them, but I didn't enjoy watching it either. Just felt necessary. Like a wound finally closing the way it always should have. One morning, about 2 weeks after everything broke, a firm from Berlin offered to acquire Thorncore. The number they sent over was huge. More than I ever imagined seeing on a screen with my name attached to it. But I didn't hesitate. I declined. Not because I didn't want the money, but because I hadn't done all this to cash out. I did it so people like me wouldn't have to fight this kind of battle alone again. Instead of selling, I opened access. The core algorithm, the real one, was made public under an ethical open license. Any nonprofit, small firm, or educator could use it for free. Big players could license it fairly. Everyone had to credit the creators. No name scrubbing. No team effort smokescreens. Just real trackable authorship. A few of my former teammates reached out after that. Some apologized. Some wanted jobs. Some just said thank you for doing what they didn't have the power or courage to do. I hired 3 of them. Not because I owed them anything. But because they knew how the system worked and they believed it could be rebuilt better. I set up a new lab, small, quiet, and entirely different from the corporate glass tower BrightForge had once rented downtown. No corner offices. No VP titles. We kept the lights low and the doors open. Anyone on the team could walk into any room and have their name on the next build. We called it the Eller Initiative, named after my mother. The one who left that voicemail I listened to for months after she passed. The one I kept promising to call back, telling myself there would always be time later. There wasn't. But maybe now, someone else would have the time I didn't. We built the initiative around credit, not control. Every piece of work had a contributor log. Students from small colleges could see their names appear next to PhDs from Berlin and technicians from Lagos. It didn't matter where you came from, only that you showed up. One day, a teacher from rural Minnesota sent us a video. Her 8th grade student had used our code to build a small model that predicted when their town's wind turbines should rotate to generate better output. The girl was maybe 13. Her name was Sophie. She didn't know who I was. She didn't have to. She just smiled into the camera, explaining how she taught the model to read wind speeds and direction, and how it could help reduce outages during storms. That video hit me harder than anything else, because it wasn't about winning. It was about starting something that didn't need me at the center to work. Later that week, I received a handwritten letter. No envelope. Just folded paper in a larger package that had been forwarded from an old mailing address. It was from Harper, Darren's daughter. She wrote, "I don't know if this letter will ever reach you, but I needed to say thank you. My father lost a lot. But what you did, you showed the world what fairness looks like. You didn't destroy him. You just didn't let him win. That's different. I'm studying engineering now, and I use your code every day. Thank you for leaving the door open for the rest of us." I read it twice, then put it in the drawer where I keep the quiet things I never need to show anyone else. People still ask why I didn't sue for damages, why I didn't go on camera and tell the world what they did to me, why I didn't make them beg. But what they don't understand is I didn't need to be right in public to make things right in reality. And that's the thing about legacy. You can try to put your name on everything, or you can build something strong enough that it doesn't need your name at all. That's what I chose. Now when I walk into the lab each morning, it's just another day. Coffee, code, checking on new contributors. Sometimes I visit schools. Sometimes I speak to small founders. I don't tell them what happened. I just help them build something cleaner, fair. Sometimes I think back to the boardroom, to the folder, to the way Darren smiled like the ending was already written. And sometimes I smile back, because the ending they wrote for me was quiet. But the one I wrote, it's still running. And it's not ending anytime soon.